Hey, it's Matt Pinfield. It's KLOS New and Approved. The new album from Slash is called Orgy of the Damned. It's an incredible record of collaborations. And Slash doing a record he always wanted to do, playing some favorite blues songs. I've got Slash right now. Slash, good to see you, man.
Yeah, good to see you too.
You know,
Yeah,
I got to tell you, Slash, this record is so cool, but it really was born out of stuff that you were doing. Like after Guns N' Roses, left the first time, you were doing some shows, right? You were like doing some gigs out.
yeah. Well, I mean, the blues jamming thing was something that I've been doing forever. And when I had when I left Guns, I was sort of wandering around trying to figure out what I was going to do next. And I, friends with Teddy Andreatis and Johnny Griperic, and I used to jam with their band, the Screaming Cocktail Hour, all the time, every Tuesday at the Baked Potato, right?
Yeah.
And so we put a band together with them called Slash's Blues Ball, and we just went, cover band, and we had a blast just playing all these cool old songs. And we toured around, and it was just a fun thing to do. And I thought, God, it'd be great to record this at some point. But because it was just a fun sort of fuck around thing, it wasn't really what you call in my career trajectory. I was doing, I did Snake Pit after that, and then Velvet Revolver and Miles Kennedy and the Conspirators. And so I never got around to doing the Blues Ball record. And then finally, it was started to creep up again in the back of my mind. And so Guns had a break during their last tour. And I thought, God, I've got 3 weeks off. I'm going to make that record,
Yeah.
and it's really fun and cathartic to do it. And the really cool thing about it is that, I managed to go in there and record with these guys. And now that we've got the record out, we're going to do a tour, and it affords me to be able to play this kind of thing for, hour 45, 2 hours every night for a tour this summer, which is going to be a great outlet for me.
It's going to be amazing. And it was cool. I know that, you'd said to me that, really, I mean, you're a hard rock guitarist, but you love the blues stuff. You don't want people to think, well, this is just what I'm going to do. But you thought it was a great idea to do collaborations and get some friends on the record, too, which turned out to be great.
Yeah, I thought that would make it a little bit more eclectic than just a straight up sort of Slash doing the blues kind of a record. So, and it was a lot of fun to do, and I got to work with some really great people doing this. Brian Johnson, it was awesome to get him in the studio, and Gary Clark. I mean, all of them. Gary Clark Jr., Paul Rogers. Dorothy for the first time getting a jam with her. So it was just a really great experience working with all these great artists.
Yeah, I loved it. I thought it was really cool when you went up with Dorothy at the end of her last tour and did her title track, Gifts from the Holy Ghost. That was an incredible night.
That was fun. That was fun. That's right. So I actually just played on her single of hers for her next record, which is really cool.
Yeah, I know she's been working with Scott Stevens, and I'm really happy that you're doing that. I think
That's
it's
great.
really cool.
That's great to work with.
Yeah, so it's great. So Slash, let's talk about the making of this record because it's so cool. You got a lot of friends on it. Let's talk about what you and I both love. Paul Rogers. Let's talk about how he really. Well, first of all, he should be in the Rock and Roll of Fame. It's absurd that Bad Company and Free aren't in there. He's not in there, but he's one of the greatest white blues soul singers ever. Right?
Yeah, I mean, I think he was always regarded as the top UK blues rock and roll singer. Always, he's always been at the top of that list. I was really fortunate that he took an interest in me at some point in the '90s and had me play on a couple things with him. His Jimi Hendrix tribute I played on, and then also his Muddy Waters tribute record I played on as well. And I jammed with Queen with him when he was singing, with Queen for a minute there. And I just established this relationship with him. And so when I wanted to do Born Under a Bad Sign, he was obviously the first person that I thought of. So gave him and Cynthia a call, and he really was gracious about doing it. And he did such an amazing version of that song.
Yeah, I mean, we all love the Cream version and many others from the time, but this new version is great. And Paul's a natural to sing that song, which I love.
And very humble too. Even after all these years of being so highly regarded and reaching legendary status, he's still super, super humble and gets surprised that people have all these positive things to say about his voice.
Yeah, and it's just like we're still blown away by it. And he sounds great. I mean, he had dealt with some health issues, but he came back from it strong. You
Yeah,
know,
he's done really well. Yeah.
yeah, which I love. So let's talk about Brian Johnson and Steven Tyler playing harmonica in Killing Floor and the
Yeah.
choice of that song. It's a great version, and we've been playing it a lot here.
Yeah, that was one of the songs I've always wanted to do. We never did it in the Blues Ball for some reason, but when the time came to make this record, I definitely wanted to take a shot at it. And Brian, I don't, he was. It's funny because he was really the only person I thought of to sing this song. And I've never obviously heard Brian really cover anything. I jammed with Brian with Velvet Revolver in Florida back in 2000, I guess it was 2008 or something like that. But and I think we did an ACDC song, but I don't know why it was that something about his voice thought made me think that, he would do a great version of a Howling Wolf song. So I called him up and he was really excited about the prospect. And it turns out that he was majorly influenced by Howling Wolf and a lot of the blues singers of the era. And so he jumped at the chance to do it, which was really endearing. And it was also one of the first people I reached out to. And it was encouraging because he was into it, gave me the confidence to go after the rest of the people that
Yeah.
because it's daunting when you have all this material and you have to go out to all these people and see if they'll participate in it. But anyway, so Brian and I went into the studio in Sarasota, this little recording studio over there called Burnt Orange, little tiny,
Yeah.
cool people, and we had a great time. Mike Klink and Brian and I, and we just banged out this version of Killing Floor. And then when I went back to LA, I heard from Steven Tyler, who I'd been actually trying to reach before I did the record about possibly doing something on it, but I couldn't find him, and so all the music was recorded, and all of a sudden he calls me, and he goes, so what were you trying to reach me about? Oh, it's a little after the fact at this point, but he offered his services on the harmonica to come down and do. I think maybe I might have asked him because I was having somebody come in to do the harp at that moment, and Steve goes, "I'll do it," and he drove down and we hung out all day, and he probably took about maybe 10 minutes to record the bit. The rest of it we were just hanging out because I hadn't seen him in a long time, but it was great having two guys from two bands that had such a massive influence on me that the second that I picked up the guitar, those two bands, Aerosmith and AC/DC, were the first and foremost biggest influences on me. So to get together with these two heroes of mine and then to record a song by all of our heroes, or this was Howlin' Wolf, was just a really cool, full circle, special moment.
Yeah, it was incredible, and I was thinking about when I saw you guys opening for Aerosmith on Permanent Vacation Tour at Giant Stadium. And that was what an incredible show that was. Deep Purple were right in the middle, but it was an amazing show, and you've had that friendship for years. Have you ever had that conversation with Steven, I know, or Joe, about like how much you loved Rocks from the time you were a kid?
Oh, they know. I mean, God, I've been in touch with them ever since '88, I guess it is.
Yeah.
So yeah, they've heard that story a million times.
Because I do love that story, man. I thought about you the other day. I heard Combination. I'm like, Slash loves this too.
Yeah, no, that record, I remember the first time I heard it, I was at a party, right? And then this was years after the album came out. This was like 1978. And out at a party, and I'm 13 at the time, and everybody's older than me. And there are a lot of music that was going on. Somebody's putting records on one after the other. And then this record comes on, and literally I was just like I was just like dumbstruck. I was like, what the fuck is that? And it really spoke to me. I think it was the bluesiness of it, the aggression of it, the sleaziness of it, all that really I just dialed right in. But I didn't know what the name of the record was or anything. And so like a couple weeks later, I went over to this girl, you've heard the story. I went to this girl's house that I'd been trying to court for like months. And she finally invited me over, and her mother's out of town. And I'm like, oh, this is the moment of truth. And so she's got the incense and the candles, and we've got some Jack Daniels and some weed, and we're hanging out and we're listening to records. And she put that record on, and I just was like, that's all I did was obsess on this record. I played it over and over, and she's just sitting there,
Yeah.
right, all dressed up and ready to go. And I'm playing this record over and over again. And she finally gets to that point where she's like, it's getting late. Maybe you should go home.
It's amazing. It shows your true love for rock and roll and what
Yeah,
you're
and
destined
I
to
got
do.
on my bike and I got on my bike and rode home as if I just gotten laid for the first time. And that record really was a pivotal thing for me.
What was your favorite ACDC album starting out? Was it back in black? Was
It
it
was
was it like
it, no,
Highway
it
to
was
Hell?
Powerage.
Power Age. What a great I mean, God, yeah.
Still probably one of my favorite AC/DC records. But at the time that like when I got into them, the record that came out was Highway to Hell, right?
Yeah.
And that's how I became familiar with him. And then because of that record, I heard Power Edge and I was like, whoa, this record. And that was really that got me into the whole ACDC catalog. And then Bon Scott died. And that was just it's like I just got into these guys. And then really in pretty quick succession, Brian came into it and one of the biggest years for metal in the 80s was 1980, and you had the Back in Black come out, and then you had Ozzy's Diary of Madman come out and all that. So it was like and Sabbath's Heaven and Hell. It was a huge year for
Huge year for rock, which was great. And yeah, Power Age is one of those incredible records from Rock and Roll Damnation, Sin City, all those songs that are on that record. It's so great. Riff
Down
raff.
Payment Blues. Down Payment Blues was the song that really stuck with it. Still to this day, one of my favorite all-time rock and roll songs.
It's incredible. Recently, Dean Del Rey did his Bon Scott tribute night, and I couldn't believe Bill Burr got up and played drums. He wanted to do What's Next to the Moon. I'm like, great, deep track, man, great album, every song, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So let's talk about Chris Stapleton and doing oh well. I know how much you and I and people that love the blues love the Peter Green era of Fleetwood Mac. If you know of that stuff, and I thought it was so cool that you decided to do oh well. So first of all, talk to me about why you're a big fan of that era, and then let's talk about getting Chris Stapleton involved.
I have really specific memories of that song when I was living in LA and I was 12, 13. I was really discovering music for myself because I've been raised on my parents' music, which was all really killer. But when you start to become a teenager, you start to identify with your own thing. And I was listening to KMET radio station. That was the big station at the time. And I don't think KLOS had even come up yet, right? And I remember hearing that song "Oh Well," and I didn't even know who it was at the time. I just remember hearing the song, and it was great. And I loved the lyrics, and I loved the riff, and it just sort of always stuck with me. And then as time went on, I started to learn about the original Fleetwood Mac. And then when I picked up the guitar, of course, Peter Green became one of my big guitar heroes. So, that's always stuck with me. I always wanted to cover that song. And I think we sort of dabbled with it, like we did like like medleys and stuff and in the blues ball back in the 90s, and that riff got stuck in there. But I never really covered the song in earnest. So that's another song that I wanted to put on this record. And I thought, what would be really cool is having Chris Stapleton because he had opened up for Guns N' Roses a couple of years prior to that. And I wasn't really familiar with him at the time, but he was one of the most standout artists that I've heard in recent memory. It's just such a naturally gifted music guy. It just pours out of him and it's really soulful. So I thought his kind of delivery over that riff would be killer. But I never met him. We never were introduced during that Guns N' Roses tour. And so I had to get his number from a producer friend of mine, Dave Cobb, I just
Yeah.
worked with, and he gave me Chris's number. So I cold called Chris out of the blue and just said, "Hey, this is Slash," and I was wondering, and he was really cool because I mean he could have been like not interested or pissed off that someone gave his number out, whatever. Anyway, but he dug the song and he was busy touring around doing all these shows at the time, and he actually really bent over backwards to find time to go in and record this version of this song, which is great.
It is great. Did he work with Dave Cobb down at RCA in Nashville, or did he just?
I think he's been working with Dave Cobb since the beginning.
Yeah. So I mean,
Yeah, but in Nashville. So when we were doing the four album, the Conspirators were doing the four album in 2022. I remember there was this huge plaque with a multitude of platinum records in the studio against the wall,
yeah,
and it was Chris Stapleton's records.
yeah, that's amazing. It's so great, and it turns out he said that he was just a huge fan of yours and the bands and Guns, right?
Yeah, it turns out that he was a fan. I mean, you know, I never sort of uh provide that information too much, but he sounded like he was like really into Guns N' Roses. So I said, okay, I'll take it.
Yeah, that's great because that version is really incredible. Now Tash, who's touring with you and Ted, is great. He does a version of living for the city from Intervisions, one of the greatest. My favorite I think it's my favorite Stevie Wonder album. It's one of them, but it's definitely my. Yeah, I know you love that record as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up with that record. I remember when it came out. I remember my mom used to have it on during the day, all day long. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah. So
and but it was I loved the record, but the Living for the City was one of the song on that record that really I for some reason really identified with, and I loved the image portrayed of New York, and I loved the live action audio when the protagonist of the song gets arrested when he first steps foot in New York City for something that he didn't do. And it was something about that just painted this picture for me. So in the blues ball back in the 90s, we used to do Superstitious.
yeah,
Um, what was it? Superstition.
yeah, yeah,
Anyway, and we used to cover that, but when it came time to do this record, I thought, yeah, we can't really do that song. It'll just be sort of corny if we record that. But if Stevie Wonder songs, I have this one song that I love, and I had this feeling that Tash could sing it. So I brought up "Living for the City," and he loved the song too, and we just went at it. And that's probably one of the few songs on the record that really hasn't been covered by anybody.
No, nobody. I think because I mean he's got the perfect voice for it, and a lot of people wouldn't try necessarily because you're right. Intervisions is an incredible record from Too High to the End. It's one of my favorite albums from being a kid. You know.
It's sort of a deep cut, I think, you know, so
Yeah,
that's the reasons.
yeah, it's great. So tell me about performing and being on Dorothy's new record and then going to play with her. She's got a very soulful voice too. When you were making the choices of the different singers that were going to be on the record, like Gary Clark Jr., did you make a list for yourself or were you just starting to call friends?
No, no, no. You pick the song, right? And
Yeah.
then in your mind's eye, imagine who would be great on each song. And that's it. So each song is an independent thought. Who would be good on this song? And you just go through the songs like that. And so when I got to Key to the Highway, which is a really sort of sentimental song for me because that was one of the songs that really sort of I connected with Teddy Andreadis and Johnny with back in the day, and we used to play it all the time. So I was thinking about it, and I thought, Dorothy would be amazing on that song. And I've always liked Dorothy. I've tried to tour with her before, and we just never seem to. We always keep missing each other. So I thought this would be a great excuse to call her,
Yeah.
get her into the studio. And then we connected on it, and she came in and did. I mean, it was great being in the studio with her when she did it because she really fucking balls to the wall delivery of it.
Yeah, she's got an incredible voice and just so much soul. She's soulful in such a big way. And what about Gary Clark Jr.? Tell me about that relationship. You knew each other for a little while as well?
We were touring, and we had a show that was the night after Gary Clark was playing in the same venue. So I got there a day earlier, and Megan and I went and watched Gary Clark. And I'm a big fan of his, but we'd never met. So we met after that show. It turns out that he was a big fan too, which I would never, I wouldn't have imagined it, but he was. So we hung out and stuff, and a really cool guy and amazing guitar player. And when I was doing the idea of doing Crossroads, I thought, yeah, Gary would be great on this. And one of the times that I saw him was actually opening for Eric Clapton. So it just came Crossroads, maybe Gary would do it. And so I called him up, and he was working on the record that he just came out with recently.
Yeah, that JPEG Raw with Stevie Wonder on it and stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that. So he was in the studio with that, doing that, and I asked him, and he goes, "You know what, man? I would love to fly out there and do that and get away from this for a minute." I
Yeah.
think he'd been working really hard on his record, and it was a good excuse for him to take a break and do something that he didn't have to really think about. So he just came in, and that was one of the few songs on the record where the vocals were done live in the studio with the band.
Oh, that's great. And
It was a very fun experience.
you know the thing we did at Amoeba was fantastic. I know there were a little few technical issues, but you know it was really great to see you get out there and play for the
It was
people.
nice and loose, and the people, I think the thing that really made it was the fans that came down there and hung out were great, and they gave us, I think, the necessary support to be able to get through that
Yeah.
that's because I mean we only practiced those songs acoustic for a day before we actually went down there and tried to perform them. And then yeah, the technical issues or whatever, but the fans were great, and I think the looseness of it and the sort of open kind of flow to it was really cool.
Yeah, and you and Ted and Johnny, those early days of playing like with Big Potato, was that fun? Did you guys like just start calling out songs sometimes? How much did you plan? I mean, I know you guys were super loose and you know it was so much fun. It was becoming a regular thing on Tuesday nights. But tell me what that experience was like. What you remember of it?
Well, I mean, I would go down there and jam with them on songs that they had in their set initially. So they had a ton of songs. BB Jung. You remember BB Chung King?
Yeah, of course.
Great blue. He was in the band, and Chuck Kavoris was the other guitar player in the band. So I get up with them and we play, like songs that we're going to be doing in the set on this tour, like Parchment Farm, and we do Key the Highway, and we do Thrill Is Gone, and we do like just all this stuff. And I would just get up there, they would play what they do, and I would just jam. I would just whatever they played, I would just sit in on that on whatever it was. And so then when we started to do the blues ball thing, then we had some of their songs that we did, and then some of the songs that I wanted to do, and we would just throw it together at a day of rehearsal. Because there's songs that you like, you sort of inherently know, right?
Yeah.
Even if you played them all the way through, you know the riffs, and you just start jamming them. It's very loose, but very sort of inspired by these people that you grew up listening to and sort of you cut your teeth on, and you just start throwing it together.
You know, it's great. It's something like, when you do Mose Allison songs, like you said, like Parchment Farm, like a guy who was like a blues piano player, but you take it in a new direction. And it's just, I'm excited to see what that's like.
We're rehearsing right now. Like after I get done with you, I've got to go to the studio, and we're putting together this set list for the tour. And it's so cool because we know the songs, but we sort of go into it. We don't really listen to the originals. We know the riff, we know how the song goes, and then we just sort of take it and we make sure it's credible within, like doing the song itself justice, but then we take it off into our own arrangement that we feel comfortable doing. And it sounds really good, but still we're sort of maintaining a certain amount of looseness to it. So not like over practicing anything or
Yeah.
whatever. It's gonna be a fun tour.
It's going to be great. Well, Slash, I want to thank you for taking the time to hang out with me today. I don't want to make you late for rehearsal.
Fun talking.
I-
No, I've got 27 minutes to get there. I'm good.
Yeah, I want to make sure you're good. I just want to tell you, I love this record, man. I just love there's like a great community camaraderie, friendship of all the people that are on the record, and it feels like that. It feels great. You know what I mean?
Right.
Here,
Because that's really what it was. It was all about just hanging out, having a good time, and it was very sort of loose and no pressure, and it was really an enjoyable experience. So you want that to come across on the record, but you don't know it at the time. But now that it's done, I'm glad that translates.
yeah, it's great. Well, Slash, thanks for taking the time today. Orgy of the Damned, such a great record. It was excellent. I loved hanging out with you and being able to introduce you and at Amoeba as well.
All right. Yeah, man.
Oh,
Yeah, thanks.
Yes, thank you, Slash. Slash, thank you so much for being here today, man. It was, again, great to see you at Amoeba. I'm excited that this record is out, and always enjoy having you here on the show, man. Thank you so much for doing it.
Matt, I appreciate getting a chance to talk to you. Thank you for your support and everything on this. And good to see you. And I'm sure I'll be seeing you at some point down the road pretty soon.
Absolutely. I'll come see you at the Greek. I'm pumped
There you
about
go.
that. You know, it'll be great. Slash, thanks again, man. It was great.
Have a good one, man. Cheers.
Yeah, you too now. Orgy of the Damned is a new album. It's incredible from Slash. Thanks so much for watching and listening. This is KLOS, new and approved. I'm Matt Pinfield. I'll be back with you soon.